Alright, y'all, we're back with the fifth installment of the 3 for 30 series. For those of you who are new to it, the 3 for 30 series is a series where I pretty much give my takes on every team as they head into the NBA offseason. I give 3 points on what I think these teams should focus on or look forward to as they make their ascension to an NBA championship. And for today's episode, we have the Purgatory Pistons. So let's get right into it. So, first on the list for the Detroit Pistons this offseason is to re-sign Christian Wood. Now, Christian Wood, a lot of people might not have heard of his name that much this season, and it's for good reason. He only had a couple weeks where he was playing some high-level basketball. He also plays in Detroit, which doesn't help. They don't really get a lot of media presence, especially on like SportsCenter, the big name talk shows, FS1, all that good stuff. They don't really get talked about that much, so that's why we talk about him here. But Christian Wood, he took over the starting center job after Andre Drummond was traded at the trade deadline to Cleveland, and post All-Star break, Christian Wood was putting together a impressive performance after impressive performance for the Pistons. He averaged 24 points per game, 9.6 rebounds per game, 2.1 steals and blocks per game, also known as stocks per game. And all of that was on 57, 39, 76 shooting splits, which the big number to be focused on there is the 39% from three. Christian Wood, after having so many years of a paint beast of Andre Drummond who could not extend himself past the free throw line offensively, to have a big who can give you similar numbers to what Andre Drummond did, but also be able to extend out to the three-point line is going to be huge as the Pistons try to progress to a more modern age of basketball. Obviously, he's not the same rebounding threat that Andre Drummond was, but again, in today's world of the modern NBA, defensive rebounding is obviously still a big thing, but as we see more or less and less people going for offensive rebounds, it also means that you don't really have to focus as much on the defensive rebounding aspect of the game. But I mean, it's not like Christian Wood is a bum of a rebounder. He still got almost 10 per game, which is great for a starting center. That's all you really need. And again, he's just a more modern version of the center than what Andre Drummond is and was for the Pistons. And then one last note on the Christian Wood re-signing situation. He is an unrestricted free agent, so other teams will be able to prime away from the Pistons without having the fear of the Pistons just simply matching. So Detroit will have to put a little bit more effort into these contract negotiations, which I don't think should be too difficult because this is the first team that Christian Wood, although he is 24, I believe, and relatively young, he has already bounced around on a few teams, and this is the first chance he's really gotten in the NBA to prove himself, so I don't see why he would leave the Pistons. But again, he could easily leave, but the Pistons will have to maybe give him a bit more money than they hoped for, but at the same time, they should be fine. And then leading to point number 2, the Pistons, as I called them at the start of the video, the Purgatory Pistons are currently stuck in the NBA's least favorite position for a franchise, the purgatory position. Basically, they have not a lot of young talent. They have some aging superstars. They can never get a top draft pick, and they're always in that late lottery, middle of the first round area every single draft year. And it's no different this year. They have the 7th pick overall in the upcoming draft. Last year, they took Sekou Demboya in the lottery, who as of now is the only real young player on the team who has a lot of potential to become something better than just your average role player or starter. And basically, the Pistons are going to need more of these types of players, these types of project type players, with the hopes that one of them can be developed into a star player who will attract other free agents and other good role players who can progress a team. And so, again, the point is just they simply have to find this talent and they need to take some chances, because as of now, that 7th overall pick is the only pick they have in the entire 2020 NBA draft. and just taking a chance on one guy at the 7th pick is simply not going to be enough. So because of that, I think it'd be a wise option for the Pistons to look towards maybe some younger restricted free agent type players who could potentially blossom into a quality player for them. I've pinned 3 potential options for this type of role. Number 1 being Josh Jackson, who is currently with the Memphis Grizzlies, but will be an unrestricted free agent in this free agency. Now, obviously, he's been labeled as a bust so far. The former top draft pick has bounced around from a few teams already. The Phoenix Suns gave up on him after 2 years, and then he went to the Grizzlies, where he spent most of his time in the G League, in which he was actually dominating the G League, which is great to see, but also doesn't say too much about how he will fare once he gets back, getting minutes in the NBA. He did have some impressive games in the few games he did play for the Memphis Grizzlies NBA team, but again, we're not exactly sold on if Josh Jackson is actually back. His offensive game has progressed a lot better than many thought it would by at this point, which is great, but the defense, the defensive side of the ball was the reason why he was drafted so high, and that part of his game just simply has not expanded to the NBA level, which is a bit worrisome because, again, he was drafted to be a defensive player first, offensive player second. So the fact that he's now become an offensive player first and a defensive player second has not exactly intrigued teams. But again, with the Pistons, they need to take some chances, and I think Josh Jackson would be a perfect chance or risk opportunity for them to find a player, get him on a slightly cheaper deal than you could for some other better players maybe, and essentially just let him develop for a few years, see if you have some star potential there, because he's still only 22 years old. I mean, he was drafted really young coming out of the draft, and he's only been in the league for like 3-4 years maybe, so take a chance on Josh Jackson, and hopefully he pans out, and if he doesn't, you can move on like you have all these past years with other players. And option number 2 for free agency for the Pistons, and this one might be a little bit more unrealistic, to be honest with you, but if they took the chance on Fred VanVleet, if they could offer him enough money to pry him away from other suitors, I think he'd be a great option for them. He is a little bit on the older side for what we're looking for here for the Pistons. He is 26, but he did just have his first year at the Raptors where he was starting, and he averaged 17 points per game, 6.6 assists per game, 1.8 steals per game, all on 41, 39, 85 shooting splits. And along with being a great playmaker and scorer, he's also an above average defender, which is just an added bonus. And although he might be a little bit undersized, he is, like I said, a quality defender, and he's someone that the Pistons could look to build around temporarily. You know, think maybe like what the Celtics did with Isaiah Thomas, where they had him just kind of be the lead guy for a few years as they let other talents grow around him. This could be a similar situation. I don't think it's very likely to happen, but if they were able to pull it off, I think Fred VanVleet could easily be a good signing for them. And the last option, who I already talked about in the Minnesota Timberwolves video, is Malik Beasley, who recently put up 20 points a game for the Timberwolves in the few games he played with them after being traded there from the Nuggets. Ironically enough, right after I posted that Minnesota Timberwolves 3 for 30 video, he was arrested on possession of marijuana charges, and he has since been released from jail, but I just found the timing really ironic for that. It doesn't appear that that's going to affect the upcoming season too much, so if the Pistons want to go out and get a young scorer, Malik Beasley is only 23 years old and has proven that he can be a 20-point per game scorer, albeit a small sample size, but he's somewhat proven it, so Pistons could go out and try to make him their number 1 or number 2 option. He's a really young guy who could maybe mentor from Derrick Rose and a lot of the other vets that the Pistons currently have. It's worth taking a chance on it, even though he is a restricted free agent and Minnesota will most likely match whatever offer he is sent. Again, it's worth the risk. And then that will bring me to the final point for the Detroit Pistons. It is time for them to hit the trade finder. I know they have been a top selection for fans to hit the trade machine for, looking for offers and other things that could help the Pistons progress to more of a rebuild mindset. And the first player who they should look to try to find some offers for is Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose has yet again proven that he's still a very valuable piece to an NBA team, even post all those knee injuries and surgeries. He averaged 18 points per game and 5.5 assists per game on 49, 30, 87 shooting splits this past season. And while Derrick Rose was a great player for the Pistons on the court, willing them to a few victories that they might not have won had they not had him, the best part about Derrick Rose is the fact that he's going into the last year of his current contract and he'll only be making $7.6 million on his last year. Now, why is this good for the Pistons? It's good because of the fact that his contract is not, or at least his salary for this year is not so high that teams will have to give away a lot for him. If he is traded at some point, teams will be able to throw some of their bench pieces and a pick or two at the Pistons in order to get Derrick Rose. And again, if you're the Pistons, while it's been nice having Derrick Rose be a go-to scorer for them in the clutch, for where they're at right now, seeing as they are stuck in this NBA purgatory, they have no need for Derrick Rose. At this point, they should be expending him for picks and other young players if they can get that for him. Again, they only have one pick in this year's current draft, so maybe they'll make a move this offseason, but at some point next year, I fully expect them to trade Derrick Rose and get some sort of pick compensation or younger talents who they can try and develop, and it makes too much sense at this point. Now, a player who might not be as easy to trade, but should definitely still be hitting the trade finder for the Pistons is superstar talent Blake Griffin. Now, he missed the majority of this previous season due to, I'm pretty sure it was a knee injury, but with the pandemic and the cancellation and everything, he's had plenty of time to rehab, and Blake Griffin says that he's great, he's good to go, he's been feeling great for the past couple of months, he's been ready to play NBA basketball. It's just a matter of the Pistons actually getting back onto the court, seeing as they were not invited to the bubble. Now, Blake Griffin, he'll be a little bit harder to trade, like I said, just because his contract is much more expensive than Derrick Rose's. He has 2 years left on his current deal. Next year, he'll be making $36.5 million. And the year after that, he has a $39 million player option, which I would fully expect him to accept no matter what team he is on, trade or not. Blake Griffin 2 seasons ago was still an all-star level player, but this season, plagued by injuries, he only got into 18 games. He averaged 15 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 3 assists per game, all easily his lowest numbers since he was probably like a rookie or second-year player. And he did all that on 35, 24, 77 shooting splits, which is abysmal, even for Blake Griffin, who's a big and not exactly supposed to be a shooter. Shooting 24% from 3 is not at all good for any player. And while I fully expect Blake Griffin to bounce back to his normal numbers of being at least a 20-point per game scorer with maybe like 8 rebounds and 5 assists, I think he's still very much capable of that. He is also 31 years old, so you have to keep that in mind that he is, although not exactly out of his prime, he is on the decline towards the end of his career, especially since he has been plagued by injuries for a majority of his career. He's always has some sort of issue. He's never fully healthy, all that good stuff. But one trade idea that has been very popular amongst NBA fans recently since the offseason kind of kicked off, especially after the Rockets suffered a pretty bad defeat to the Lakers with their small ball strategy. A lot of fans have been hitting the ESPN trade machine and dealing Blake Griffin for Russell Westbrook. And I am fully on board with this proposition. Now, if you've made it this far in the video, don't click off. I'll explain it very briefly. I'll get my point across, don't worry. Now, why Russell Westbrook is such a good, in my opinion, a good trade option for Blake Griffin. Number one, the contracts are pretty similar. Russell Westbrook will be making more money every year for the next 3 years than Blake Griffin, but again, if you're going to trade Blake Griffin, he has a big contract. You might be looking for someone else with a big contract so that teams don't have to pair up to, like $20 million contracts together to make 40 to match Blake Griffin. Westbrook's already there by himself, and if you're the Rockets, clearly the small ball didn't work out. You need to get some bigs back in your lineup. you take a chance on a injury-plagued Blake Griffin. Hope he can stay healthy. It's a Rocket staple that players on that team are just not healthy all the time. I mean, we've already seen Eric Gordon miss an abundance of games. Westbrook missed some games. Chris Paul is always missing games. What's another player that misses games for them? Like, really? Like, come on. But again, BG will be the best big Harden has played with since his entering Houston, and his ability to both stretch the floor and be a good driver to the rim will definitely help Harden ease some pain off of Harden in the offensive game. But Blake Griffin's also athletic enough that he can be a rim protector, grab rebounds, and be a lob threat for James Harden. He'll be like a combination of every big that James Harden has played with, and will be the best one that he has played with. Again, I'll hammer that point. Blake Griffin will be perfect for the small ball formula if they still want to try to replicate it a little bit, but lean back a little bit more towards today's NBA with having, instead of no bigs, having one big who can do a lot of guard play but still do some big stuff. I think he's a really good fit for them. If you're the Pistons, you take on this huge Russell Westbrook contract, which isn't exactly pretty, but you hopefully get some other compensation with it. And like I've said all video, they're in the NBA purgatory. They should do whatever they can right now to just even get chances at hitting on a young player that could provide them some hope for the future. And then that will do it for the Detroit Pistons 3 for 30. As always, drop a comment down below with what you agreed or disagreed with what I said in this video. Other than that, drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and thank you for watching.